After a year in exile on the island of Elba, Napoleon returned to France in March 1815, greeted by enthusiasm and loyalty from soldiers and citizens alike. His remarkable comeback, known as the 100 Days, shocked Europe. Within weeks, he reassembled an army and sought to reclaim his empire. But Europe had changed. Nations that once feared his dominance now stood united, determined not to let him regain power. Napoleon understood his time was limited. He had to strike quickly before his opponents consolidated. The decision to confront the Allied armies in Belgium was bold but also risky. It placed him at the center of Europe's focus, forcing a confrontation he could not avoid. Napoleon believed his brilliance in maneuver and timing would secure victory once more. Yet this choice set the stage for his greatest test, a battle where destiny would weigh each decision heavily. The ground at Waterloo was deceptively simple: gentle ridges, open fields, and scattered farmhouses. Yet beneath its calm appearance lay the makings of a chessboard where every move mattered. Weather played its part. Rain had soaked the earth the night before, slowing movement and adding challenges Napoleon could not ignore. His adversary, the Duke of Wellington, chose his ground carefully. Wellington's army waited on the reverse slope of a ridge, hidden from direct view and protected by natural contours. This meant Napoleon would be fighting uphill, with less visibility and more difficulty anticipating his opponent's movements. The field also favored defense. Every advance would meet resistance on ground chosen by another. For Napoleon, who excelled in mobility and surprise, the very terrain limited his freedom. The decision to engage here, rather than seek a different position, marked the first moment where circumstance weighed heavily against him. Timing was often Napoleon's greatest weapon, yet at Waterloo, it became one of his greatest challenges. Rain had left the ground sodden, slowing both men and equipment. Napoleon decided to delay his opening attack until late morning, hoping the ground would dry and allow smoother movement. On the surface, this was practical. A muddy field could slow progress and hinder his artillery, but the decision carried unintended consequences. Every hour that passed gave Wellington's allies more time to regroup and prepare. Crucially, it allowed the Prussian army, marching from the east, to close the gap and threaten Napoleon's flank later in the day. What appeared a reasonable choice for tactical comfort became a strategic disadvantage. By waiting for firmer ground, Napoleon lost the initiative, ceding precious momentum to his opponents. This moment illustrates how even small decisions shaped by weather can alter the balance of history. Across the ridge, the Duke of Wellington prepared with remarkable composure. His forces included British, Dutch, Belgian, and German troops. A coalition united not by uniformity, but by shared determination. Wellington understood Napoleon's style: fast, decisive attacks designed to break formations. To counter this, he relied on discipline and defensive positioning. By placing his men behind the crest of the ridge, he shielded them from Napoleon's artillery and forced the French to commit before revealing their strength. This careful, patient approach contrasted sharply with Napoleon's desire for bold maneuvers. Wellington's decision to stand firm, rather than move aggressively, reflected his confidence that time and reinforcements would favor him. Each hour of resistance strengthened the alliance against Napoleon. His defense was not spectacular in movement, but it was masterful in patience, showing that sometimes the strongest decision is not to act, but to hold. Napoleon faced not one opponent, but two. While Wellington held his ridge, the Prussian army under Field Marshal Blücher advanced steadily from the east. Napoleon's plan depended on preventing the two forces from uniting. To achieve this, he relied on his marshals, particularly Marshal Grouchy, tasked with delaying the Prussians. Here, coordination became critical. Grouchy pursued the Prussians, but did not move decisively enough to prevent their arrival at Waterloo. Napoleon trusted that Grouchy would block them, yet his orders lacked clarity and flexibility. Instead of directing his subordinate with urgency, he allowed events to unfold with too much independence. This decision, delegating a crucial task without sufficient oversight, proved costly. It highlights a central lesson of Waterloo. Even the most brilliant leader cannot win without effective communication and coordination. As the Prussians marched closer, the margin for error narrowed dangerously. Napoleon's forces launched assaults on key positions along Wellington's line, including fortified farmhouses such as Hougoumont and La Haye. These locations became focal points of the day, absorbing energy and attention. The decision to target them was logical. Securing these strong points would open paths to Wellington's center. Yet the effort consumed time and resources far beyond what Napoleon anticipated. Instead of breaking the enemy line, the French became absorbed in prolonged struggles that yielded little advantage. Wellington, meanwhile, reinforced these positions, ensuring they held firm. What was meant to be a breakthrough became a distraction. Napoleon's decision to commit heavily here reflected his usual reliance on seizing key ground. But at Waterloo, it worked against him. These strong points, rather than offering momentum, drained it, turning Napoleon's strategy into a test of endurance he could not afford to lose. Throughout the day, communication challenges multiplied. Messages sent between Napoleon and his marshals were delayed or misunderstood. Grouchy's movements remained uncertain, and Napoleon received conflicting reports about the Prussian advance. In such moments, clarity is everything, but Napoleon's system faltered. The rapid, precise coordination that had marked his earlier campaigns seemed absent at Waterloo. His decisions, once sharp and timely, became slower and more reactive. Miscommunication not only hindered his control, but also created doubt among his commanders. Where unity of direction had once been his greatest strength, at Waterloo, fragmentation emerged. Decisions were made on partial information, leading to actions that did not align with overall strategy. This erosion of clarity was not caused by battlefield chaos alone, but by an over-reliance on assumptions. Waterloo demonstrates how poor communication can unravel even the most brilliant plans. As the afternoon wore on, the distant sound of marching grew closer. The Prussian army, undeterred by Grouchy, began to arrive on Napoleon's right flank. This was the moment his morning delay and miscommunication revealed their cost. Napoleon now faced a coalition growing stronger by the hour. His decision-making turned to containment. He attempted to split his forces between resisting the Prussians and pressing Wellington. Yet this division weakened both efforts. A general who had once thrived on concentration of force now found himself stretched too thin. The arrival of the Prussians did not overwhelm instantly, but steadily eroded Napoleon's options. It highlighted how timing, once his greatest advantage, now betrayed him. The decision not to anticipate this arrival more effectively sealed the shift of momentum. From this point forward, Napoleon's ability to regain control diminished with each passing hour. Late in the day, Napoleon sought to regain momentum through a bold final move. He committed his elite reserves, hoping to break Wellington's center and end the battle in his favor. The decision carried echoes of his earlier triumphs, where sudden concentration of force shattered opponents. Yet at Waterloo, conditions had changed. Wellington's defensive line held firm, and the Prussians continued to press in. Napoleon's once decisive reserves, instead of turning the tide, became the last measure of an exhausted strategy. The gamble demonstrated his unyielding belief in decisive action, but it also revealed how much pressure had limited his choices. What might once have worked with brilliance now seemed desperate. The failure of this final move symbolized more than the end of a battle. It was the closing act of a career built on daring risks and extraordinary victories. Throughout the long day, Wellington remained remarkably composed. He moved calmly among his forces, offering reassurance and making adjustments with precision. His decision to stand firm rather than risk aggressive maneuvers was a gamble in its own right, but it paid off. Wellington trusted the strength of his position and the promise of reinforcements. His leadership was steady, contrasting sharply with Napoleon's increasingly strained decisions. This contrast highlights an important lesson. Success does not always come from brilliance or daring, but from patience and discipline. Wellington's choices at Waterloo were not spectacular in design, but they were consistent and deliberate. By the end of the day, his ability to remain unshaken gave his army confidence and cohesion. While Napoleon's reputation was built on seizing moments, Wellington's legacy at Waterloo was built on enduring them. By 1815, Napoleon was no longer the youthful commander of Lodi or Austerlitz. Years of campaigning, political turmoil, and personal challenges weighed heavily upon him. At Waterloo, observers noted his fatigue, physical and mental, that influenced his decision-making. Hesitation replaced the sharp instinct of earlier years. His health, once robust, now hindered his energy. This was not the sole reason for his difficulties, but it magnified them. A leader who had once thrived on speed and clarity now faced the limits of endurance. Decisions made under strain often lacked the precision of earlier brilliance. Waterloo illustrates how leadership is not only about skill and knowledge, but also about stamina and resilience. The empire Napoleon built depended upon his personal vitality. When that waned, so too did the sharpness of his choices. This human element played a quiet but decisive role in the outcome. Waterloo was not merely a military event. It was a turning point in world history. The decisions made on that field reshaped Europe for decades. With Napoleon's defeat, the balance of power shifted, allowing a long era of relative stability under the concert of Europe. For France, it meant the end of an empire and the return of monarchy. For Britain and its allies, it was a moment of vindication, proof that cooperation could overcome even the most formidable opponent. Yet the story is not just political, it is also personal. Napoleon's decisions, brilliant and flawed, remind us of the weight leaders carry in shaping destinies. Waterloo stands as a case study in leadership under pressure, where choices ripple outward to affect millions. It shows that history turns not only on grand movements, but also on moments of hesitation, clarity, and resolve. The lessons of Waterloo extend far beyond the battlefield. They speak to leadership, timing, and the consequences of decision-making. Napoleon's delay in the morning, his miscommunication with Grouchy, his focus on strong points, and his final gamble reveal how small missteps can accumulate into decisive outcomes. Wellington's steadiness, his use of terrain, and his patience highlight the power of discipline and restraint. Together, their decisions form a contrast between brilliance strained by circumstance and calm persistence rewarded by time. Waterloo teaches us that leadership is not just about bold ideas, but about aligning those ideas with reality, timing, and clear communication. It is a reminder that even the most gifted leaders must adapt to changing circumstances. The decisions that lost an empire were not inevitable. They were human choices shaped by pressure, fatigue, and the unforgiving test of history. As the sun set over Waterloo, history had turned a page. Napoleon's era of dominance was over, not because of violence, but because of choices, decisions that, one by one, tipped the balance. The delay for dry ground, the distractions at the strong points, the miscommunication with subordinates, the underestimation of his opponents, all combined into a story of ambition tested by circumstance. Wellington's patient defense and the timely arrival of the Prussians completed the turning point. Waterloo became more than a battle. It became a metaphor for finality, for the moment when momentum ends and history shifts. Today, it endures as a lesson in strategy, leadership, and humility. It shows us that empires can rise on bold decisions but fall on fragile ones. Waterloo reminds us that in the end, it is not force alone that shapes destiny. It is the wisdom of choices made under pressure.
Please subscribe and look for more documentaries at Swords and Shadows.